Hi, welcome back again. It's Chris from Southside Capital. One of the things that we always get is, well, my friend's comparable site is this. So what we're going to do is we're going to compare two what looks like identical sites, and we're going to look at those terms and see which one looks more attractive from a valuation standpoint. So these are just some of the key things that you want to look for. Pretty hypothetically, in any deal are going to have these. So the first one is, let's compare the rent between Tower A, and we'll call this one Tower B. So if your rent, let's just say it's the same on each one of them, we'll call it $1,000 a month, and we'll just say this one's $1,000 a month too. So now we have pretty equal payment. We know that's the same. This one over here has what they call an escalator, and it's 15% every 5 years. Okay. This one over here gets 3% annually. Looks similar, right? 3, times 5. Now you got equal payments. Let's say the term length on this one. Let's say this is somebody really got a big long term on this. We'll call it 75 years. Should be amazing, right? And this one over here has been up for a little while, and let's just say it has 10 years left on the contract. And for co-location, if you guys watched the other videos, we explain more in depth what co-location is, but that's when you have a second tenant added to the tower if you collect more revenue, or if you have what they call ground rent, which doesn't matter how many tenants get put on there, you get the same amount of rent. So let's just say that this one is no co-location, and we'll say this one's yes. Okay? And then lastly, they always sneak these little things in here, they call them ROFRs. And that's what we call right of first refusal, which means if you go to sell that lease, you have to go back to the people that own it. Sometimes that's a bad thing. It prolongs the process as well, and sometimes it will eliminate certain bidders on processes. But we'll just say, for the sake of argument, that both of these have it in there, because all the newer leases are probably going to have it in there one way or the other. So all things being equal here, if you look at these, they look like identical towers, but here's really what the difference is. So if you look at this escalator, they're going to take 15% every 5 years. Sounds like a decent deal. And this one's 3% annually. You always want to take it annually just because of the way that the money compounds over the 15%. This one's going to actually be less than 3% a year, because you're only getting that compounded every 5 years, where this one you're going to get that annually. So next year, this thing is going to go to $130, and then you're going to compound that the following year over that $130, and so on and so on and so forth. This one, you're only going to get that every 5 years during the contract. So point here, this one is the check mark so far. That's the winner there. So your term length, hey, I got a really long contract here, that's probably a good thing. Well, no, usually it's not. And the reason is because if they've locked you into certain terms and conditions, they can get out of the lease, but you cannot. Most people don't understand that. But if you have a 75-year lease, it's not guaranteed money to you. You should read that in the contract. It actually is guaranteed that it's really coming from the tower company, whether they have the rights to be there or not. They have the rights for 75 years. Typically, yours is 3 months. So they can give you notice and they can terminate it virtually at any point. They're taking that right, not you. So in this particular case, same thing. People think that short term is a bad thing. It's not in this case, because this will give you an opportunity, if it's a site they're going to keep, to renegotiate that to what the new value is on that contract. So we'll say that advantage over here. So in co-location, what we explained earlier, if they put a second tenant on this tower, right here, in this particular lease, they got no extra revenue. In this particular model, let's say they get 25% of the revenue. Every time another tenant comes on this tower, let's say that second tenant that comes on here, and that second tenant might be worth, call it $2,000 a month. Well, if you got a 25% co-location, your take to the landowner is going to be an additional $500 a month. So now all of a sudden you're starting to drive this revenue up. You've doubled your revenue. Over here, that's not the case. You're still living with this plus whatever your escalations are. So same thing, advantage here. So this one's worth more here. Now let's say they both have ROFRs. So if you have signed an agreement that has a right of first refusal in it, The biggest thing is you have to jump through hoops. And that means that you should hire somebody that's going to send this out to people that are willing to put an offer with a right of first refusal in there. The majority of the tower companies now will not compete against each other, so to speak, so they will not write an offer on something they know has a right of first refusal in it. That's why you have to be very careful with the way that these are worded. But in this particular scenario, you know, call it 5 years down the road, one way or the other, this one with the second tenant is going to be producing with, let's say that the escalation had kicked in at $150. This one, 5 years down the road, is only receiving this, right? This thing has escalated 5 times at 3% annually, plus you're getting this $500 a month rent in additional now. So this one's probably, after 5 years, is probably somewhere in that neighborhood. So 5 years down the road, you may think you have the same contract, but some of these terms that really matter, that's the difference between this number and this number. And if you watched our other videos, we'll just take, you know, 15 to 18 times that number, or 15 to 18 times this number. Which one would you prefer? Obviously, it's going to be this one. So when you're looking at valuations of cell towers, it's just not out how many tenants are on it or where it's located. It really gets into the terms when you go to sell them. So whether you're negotiating a new deal for a brand new lease, or you're renegotiating your current deal because it's short term and they're calling you to do that, these are some of the terms that you want to make sure that you understand. And if you don't, give us a call. We'll be happy to help.